You won't believe this. I almost got evicted from my own home just for parking my car in my own driveway. I always thought living in a quiet neighborhood would mean peace. Maybe a little calm after a long day. Lawns trimmed, kids playing safely, neighbors waving hello. That was the image I had when I moved in. I pictured myself walking out each morning, enjoying a coffee on my porch, greeting the familiar faces down the street. That sense of calm, that sense of order, it was everything I imagined a home should be. But I was dead wrong. One woman, one obsession with rules turned my life upside down. And it all started with my car. At first, it was subtle. A note left on my windshield, a small warning about rules that apparently existed without my knowledge. I shrugged it off. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe someone just cared too much about neatness. But then the letters came. Hand-delivered, official-looking, stamped with warnings from the HOA. Immediate action required. Fines pending. Remove your vehicle. I stared at those words, not sure if I was reading a joke or if someone had completely lost touch with reality. I owned that driveway. That car belonged to me. Yet somehow I was being told I had no right to park it there. Every time I walked outside, I felt her eyes on me. She would stand on her porch, whispering to neighbors, making sure I knew she was watching. My own home, my own property, had suddenly turned into a battlefield, and it escalated fast. It wasn't just notes anymore. She started showing up at my door, glaring as if her fury could physically remove my car. She would lecture me about rules no one else followed, acting as if the neighborhood bylaws were her personal law. Letters became threats. Threats became arguments. Every knock at the door felt like a calculated escalation. I tried staying calm. I documented everything. Every note, every glare, every letter, photos, videos, timestamps. I knew I couldn't let this slide, but I also knew I had to stay rational. She wanted a reaction. She wanted to see me stressed, worried, maybe even angry. And in some ways, it worked. I was exhausted just thinking about what might come next. Neighbors started noticing. Some whispered their support. Others seemed to side with her, afraid of conflict. Or maybe charmed by her sense of authority. I realized this wasn't just about a car, or even a driveway. It was about control. She wanted to dominate, to remind everyone that she could bend the rules to her will. And me, I had become her target. Days turned into weeks. I couldn't leave my car outside because it was in violation. I couldn't park inside without feeling watched. Every time I pulled in or out, I felt the weight of her stare, like she was judging my very right to exist in my own driveway. Then came the escalation. One evening, she showed up unannounced. Doorstep confrontation, eyes blazing. She insisted I move my car immediately, claiming the HOA backed her up. I calmly reminded her with all the proof I had documented that I owned the property. That my car was mine. That the rules she imagined did not apply to me. She didn't back down. She doubled down. Threats, shouting, claiming she had the support of neighbors and the HOA alike. I stood there trying not to let panic set in, knowing that losing my composure would only feed her fire. It got worse. Flyers appeared in my mailbox, anonymous, accusatory, and full of half-truths about my rule breaking. Whispers in the street. Phone calls to the HOA that felt like ambushes. Every day became a mental chess game, anticipating her next move, preparing my defense, trying to live without giving in to fear. At night, I replayed the encounters in my head. The knocking on the door, the letters, the whispers of neighbors. How could one person have so much power over someone else's life? How could a driveway, a car, and a set of imagined rules cause so much stress? I felt trapped, anxious, and isolated, even in a community I had once thought safe. But I wasn't powerless. I called the HOA, presenting my evidence, photos, timestamps, all her visits, and all her letters. I made it clear, my property, my car, my rights. And slowly the tides began to turn. She tried to argue, tried to insist, but the documentation left no room for manipulation. Still, the fear lingered. Would she retaliate in another way? Would she escalate further, perhaps finding some other loophole to assert control? My anxiety was real. Every sound outside made me tense. Every visitor made me hold my breath. It was exhausting, but I refused to break. I started keeping a journal. Every day, every encounter, every feeling went into it. Writing helped me process the stress, helped me plan my responses. I realized that this wasn't just about a car or a driveway. It was a test of resilience, patience, and determination. I had to prove not just to her but to myself that I would not be bullied out of my own home. Some neighbors tried to intervene. A few came over to support me, quietly offering to vouch for me at HOA meetings. Others, unfortunately, seemed to enjoy the drama, whispering gossip, fueling her sense of authority. I realized quickly that standing my ground wasn't just about me. It was about showing others that manipulation and fear would not succeed. Weeks dragged on. I would wake up in the morning with a knot in my stomach, wondering what new tactic she would try. Would it be another letter, another confrontation? Maybe a call to the HOA, pretending I was in violation of some non-existent rule. The uncertainty was the worst part, the feeling that my life could be disrupted at any moment by someone else's obsession. Then one evening, she went too far. She stepped onto my property, yelling at me in front of other neighbors, claiming she had authority over my driveway. That was the breaking point. I stood my ground, calmly stating my rights, referencing the documentation I had been collecting for weeks. I refused to back down. After that, the HOA finally took action. They reviewed my evidence, spoke with neighbors, and made it clear that her harassment was not acceptable. She was warned and told to cease all interactions with me regarding my driveway. Finally, the tension lifted. It wasn't instant relief. Even after the HOA intervened, I felt the lingering effects of stress and anxiety. The constant hyper-awareness, the distrust, the feeling that any day could bring another confrontation. These were not things that disappeared overnight. But slowly, I reclaimed my sense of peace. I reflected a lot during this time. I realized that property isn't just about land, walls, or a car in a driveway. It's about safety, peace of mind, and the right to exist without fear. It's about having a space where you control what happens. And sometimes, defending that space requires more than just patience. It requires courage, documentation, and strategy. Looking back, I see the experience as a lesson in resilience. I learned to anticipate escalation, to remain calm under pressure, and to fight for what's right in a measured, strategic way. I learned that standing your ground is not about aggression, it's about clarity, evidence, and confidence. Eventually, I regained normalcy. I parked my car freely. I walked in and out of my home without anxiety. The neighborhood slowly returned to its quiet rhythm, but I was changed. I knew now how fragile peace can be, how easily someone's obsession can disrupt your life, and how important it is to protect your space with diligence. In the end, I kept my driveway, my car, and my home. But I also gained something else, a story of persistence and the power of standing up against unnecessary authority. If you've ever faced a neighbor obsessed with control, or someone trying to take what's rightfully yours, remember this: documentation, calm strategy, and unwavering resolve can make all the difference. This experience taught me not just about property rights, but about human nature, the dangers of unchecked obsession, and the importance of defending what's yours, without letting fear take control. And most importantly, it reminded me that sometimes, standing firm is the only way to reclaim your peace.